and welcome. This is the after show for the Fat Tail Thoughts podcast, where Jared and I goof around in a little bit less formal format than we did on the formal version of the show. Hey, Jared, how are you?
Oh, still having fun. This is
wild, man. Basically, this is some smart people who thought they were a bit smarter than they've proven to be, getting out ahead of their skis and getting caught out.
Yeah, I wish I could be so generous. The quote-unquote smart people that are out of their skis made stupid amounts of money in the interim. And to be clear, I don't like calling this a Ponzi because it started out as a Ponzi. We created some novel asset, but all you were doing was taking Luna holders' money and shoveling over to the stablecoin holders and then reversing, and there's nothing ultimately underneath if they all try to redeem at once. The reason I hesitate to call it a proper Ponzi, and I've said this on Twitter as well, the move to then go stand up a separate foundation and go buy a bunch of Bitcoin and back it with real assets, etc. We're now moving away from a proper Ponzi. A proper Ponzi never has enough assets to meet all redemptions. And as much as I'm a beat up Terra for a shit model, the fact of the matter is that they were attempting to do exactly that, to have a proper amount of assets to meet redemptions, etc. They just made a massive error in terms of the model, which just comes from not understanding financial history. I mean, it's anyone who's read 10 minutes of history understands that when you maintain a peg and you back it with something else, well, there's an opportunity to go fiddle with what backs it and divorce from the peg. And when that happens, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, if you'd have read George Soros's book, you'd have known this.
Yep. But I want to take this a step further because it's not the only fun thing that came out last week. Coinbase came out and decided to redefine what custody is, as long as we're talking about shenanigans.
I read your article on this and I was kind of like, okay. Yeah. What happens if Coinbase goes bump? And we're talking, and I mean, they're a public company. I don't think there's much chance of them going bump and going bankrupt. But they are, what are they?
You should have seen the debt markets. The debt markets, when this stuff came out, the debt was trading at like 50, 60 cents on the dollar in the 24, 48 hours after their earnings announcement.
Tell us what happened here. This is their SEC filing about, and some clarity around what happens if they were to go bankrupt.
Yeah, you're gonna watch. I'm gonna try and maintain composure here, but probably fail.
Breathe and focus.
Exactly. So let's start with what custody is supposed to be, Stephen. If I ask you to custody, say, my prized family heirloom, I'm going to expect you to, say, put it in a safe place. Maybe you put it in a safety deposit box. Maybe
charging you to look after your family heirloom.
Right, but let's say you're just a really nice guy and you say, yes, Jared, I'll take care of that while you go travel abroad for a year and I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
What I would not expect you to do is then go to your bank and say, hey, I've got this really expensive thing that my friend lent to me that I'm keeping safe of. Can I take out a loan against it? Which is fundamentally what Coinbase did. Coinbase claimed the product is called Coinbase Custody. And then they put a teeny disclosure, I forget, it was page 79 of a 94-page earnings report, a new disclosure that said, custody customers' assets, all 240 billion of them, for legal purposes are treated the same as general creditors. What that means is if Coinbase goes bankrupt, there is no separate, hey, here's the custody people. Get in line, you'll get your assets back. No, you get in line with all of the debt holders who lent Coinbase money, and you get to hang out in bankruptcy court hoping that some of your assets are left.
This is the people who sold them paper clips, who've got an outstanding invoice for paper clips. Going, can I get my money for my paper clips? You're in the line with these people.
And you are general unsecured creditors. If you create a debt capital, you have your senior secured, your junior secured, you've got all these tranches that say, hey, I get first in line, I get second in line, I get a claim on that asset, a claim on that asset. Your custody customers are all the way at the bottom. And they don't have a claim on anything. It's whatever's left over after everyone's picked over what's there, then you get what's left over. That's not custody under any definition. That is a rampant abuse of customers. And Brian Armstrong, the CEO, comes out on Twitter and goes, sorry, we forgot to disclose it in the user agreement. You forgot to disclose it? Go to hell. You borrowed $240 billion from your customers, misrepresented what it was, and then decided that a tweet and a disclosure on page 79 where no one will discover it is acceptable. That is absolutely ridiculous.
So what's going to happen there, do you think? Because, do these custody customers just move that $240 billion out and go, it's not secure, I'm taking it back?
I just chatted with a venture capitalist who they do stuff in the blockchain space. They were evaluating custody providers. They didn't have anything there, and just point blank came out. He said, "I'm not doing anything. I'm not storing stuff there. I can't." I mean, the point he made, which is really
custody, right? It's not custody.
We know what custody is. Bank of New York Mellon offers custody. State Street offers custody. Paxos offers custody. We know what custody is.
I'll give you my dollar and I know I'll get it back. That's what,
correct. And that's what we have models. There's no clean legal definition. I asked Dan Oury, as a professor up at Cornell, like, is there a clean definition of this? He goes, not really, but it's kind of like, you know it when you see it. And we certainly have lots of case law that demonstrates like this is and this isn't.
If I give you one of my Rolex watches for you to look after, I'm expecting it fully back. Exactly. I'm not expecting bits of it missing when you give it me back.
And by the way, if I go bankrupt, you don't expect to have to call up the creditors to say, hey, that Rolex is actually mine. No, you expect me to put it aside and say, that's not mine. I'm just holding on to it for Steven.
Yeah, you don't get to claim it as an asset if your life turns to crap. Exactly. It's my asset that I just maybe lent you for a few weeks.
Exactly. The venture capitalist I was talking with made actually a really good point. He goes, if let's say my investors, my LPs, entrust me with their funds to go invest in, take your pick of the blockchain startup, and I go and custody those assets at Coinbase. Coinbase goes bankrupt, and it ends up in general bankruptcy proceedings. If I write a letter to my LPs that say, hey, I took your money, custody at Coinbase, but it turns out it wasn't custody, it was an unsecured loan that I may get back at some point in time, the note back I'm going to get from my investors is, that's nice. We lent you the money, not Coinbase. Let us know it's going to arrive.
I want it back.
This is not a, oh, I'm sorry, you get to get in bankrupt line. Goes, no, that's now your problem. Go figure out how to get me my money back.
Or I gave you my $10. The fact that you lost it, that's your fault. You owe me $10.
So you want to put it on the list, the shenanigans algorithmic stablecoins, that was out in the open. Yes, it was fraud by any name. But that I will at least credit may be the wrong term, but I'll give them credit. They did the fraud wide out in the open, and anyone who bothered to read about how it works,
with some good intentions, not to defraud people. You know, they did.
Look, I'm not going to read into it. I don't. I want to be generous the way you are and say, oh, they didn't know what they were doing and they made a mistake, but they printed money that they enriched themselves while this was all going on, and 10 minutes of Googling would have told them how the story ended. I have zero sympathy. I have nothing nice to say about someone who launches with that model. I'm not giving them credit. They're not taking their personal proceeds and the salary and whatever else that they took out of the company and going, let me make people whole. No, that money's long gone. I have nothing nice to say about that kind of.
So I see. I'm up next week. I still don't have my topic. But I think you're up the following week doing custody, and what does custody mean?
That would be an interesting one. It's a hard...
I mean, because I think we've got a point in time, but I think knowing how you'd write this letter, you wouldn't talk about it, and this is what we do as Fat Tail Thoughts. We don't talk about the point in time, we talk about it and put it in some context to the overall. Yeah. I think defining what custody means... You know,
we could go down that path. There's a It'd be an interesting one because you've got obviously the good Bank of New York Mellon, State Street. I mean, they basically date back to the founding of the country. And by the way, hence why they're good custodians. They've been around. They got a long track record.
Well, there's reputational risk there. They're not going to want the contagion from them being on the front page of the Wall Street Journal going, State Street lost my money, because the contagion to their bigger business is huge.
Well, actually, in State Street's case, about 2/3 of their business is just custody. They are the oddball among the globally systemic important banks in the U.S. Like Bank of New York Mellon has a big attached business. J.P. Morgan, who's bigger than either of them, custody business, has a massive other business. State Street really is a custodian with some other things on the side.
So they're not going to want a crypto custodian problem to contagion into their other business. I mean, this is the takeaway, and we talked about it on the pod. You want to pick people who are forcing themselves to do this right. I'm a big fan of the guys at Gemini. Whatever you think of the Winklevi, I think that what I like about them is they've gone to the hardest place to get regulated and tested themselves. Look
at Paxos. I mean, Paxos went and got themselves a national trust charter under the OCC. It's called a bank by another name. That's a bit of an abuse of a bank term, but we'll use it. They do custody. They're a qualified custodian. They set aside, it's a different legal entity. That legal entity, all it does is hold stuff in vaults. It doesn't, so if Paxos goes bankrupt, that legal entity is totally separate and distinct. It doesn't take out debt from anybody. It doesn't issue. All it does is sit there and hold.
That wouldn't have been hard for Coinbase to follow that model.
No, what they did instead is took $240 billion of unsecured loans and went, oh, great, now we got play money. The reason they did it is because now they can take out loans against it. They can basically run their business on other people's money. And it's a rampant abuse.
So do the regulators come after that?
I don't have any insight there. I would hope so.
I think I see a career change ahead in your future as a regulator. I think the SEC needs to hire you as the chief crypto regulator.
No, I don't think so. I think they need people that are slightly better put together, slightly more reserved.
I absolutely think they don't.
How about a spokesperson? There you go.
Yeah, I can see you on the steps of the SEC with a mic in front of you, trying to be all professional with a suit on. I think I'd pay Janet Yellen to sort of. I may contribute to your salary just to get that to happen, to force you into a suit on a regular basis.
They may make me clean up my never cleaned up beard as well.
I think you could get away with a beard, but I think wearing just sort of shorts and flip-flops and a T-shirt to the office is maybe not going to cut it.
No, perhaps not. It's look, I am, and you've heard me rant about this endlessly. There's so much interesting stuff happening in the crypto space, and I am just entirely disgusted with the abuse of especially retail investors who don't know better, frankly, probably shouldn't be getting into a lot of this stuff, even though they are, and then just get absolutely fleeced. And it will keep happening because there is so much money to be made fleecing them, but I have zero tolerance for it. And I really have zero tolerance for it when you get up and say, we're upstanding, we're going to treat you well, we swear we're now a public company, and then you go pull the same bullshit that some penny hawker off the corner street is going and doing. Like, go away. We don't need that in this ecosystem. We need people that are actually looking to do it properly, actually looking to protect the investors. The world's going to be a better place when you're gone.
I mean, 240 billion, you've got to imagine that number's going to go down. That people are going to realize what they've put their money into.
This for me is it's critical. It's not that they made this omission and then wrote, "Oh, we're sorry." The company has a track record of abusing its investors. Its own employees are front-running tokens that go get listed there. They were front-running the NFTs that got listed there. They are now turning out not to do custody, even though they claim they are. I don't know who in their right mind thinks that this is someone who's attempting to be a good actor in the ecosystem. They have an unblemished track record of doing things wrong. And these are not like, hey, this is a new type of fraud we've never seen before. This is stuff that we've seen for 30, 40, 50 years is absolutely illegal in the traditional securities market. And they're going, oh, interesting. We could make a lot of money if we did that.
Yeah, you can't front run.
That's why it's illegal.
You can't front run if you work at NASDAQ and you know something's going to be listed, you can't front run that stock. If you know it's coming off the Deutsche Börse and they're going to delist from one of the exchange and they're going to come over to your exchange, you can't front run that stock as a NASDAQ employee knowing that that's going to happen. I mean,
and it's ridiculous
to do that.
It's ridiculous. And to add insult to injury, they on the NFT list, on the coins that are getting listed, they went and put out a press announcement. This was about a month ago that said we want to put in advance. Here's the list of things we're considering for the upcoming quarter, so that people don't try and front run the tokens that we're going to bring on. Well, it turns out that about 48 hours earlier, one of their employees went out and bought $750,000 worth of tokens, created a new crypto wallet, bought $750,000 of tokens. The only things they bought were the ones that went on that list. They didn't put out that list in order to stop people from front running. They put out that list because they found out they already had somebody who was working for them who already front ran it and wanted to get out ahead of the press. That's not, no. Fire the guy, take him to court, get your damn money back, and put proper compliance controls in place so that doesn't happen again. It's one after Brian Armstrong was there.
Jared, you are going to end up in a suit working for the SEC, buddy.
Only if they let me wear shorts.
Janet, if you're listening, Jared would love to work for you. Just, you may have to, as part of his signing bonus, buy him a few suits, because I think
how about a suit top with shorts and flip flops? I can make that work, so that I'll look good on camera, but I still get to.
I just have visions of you getting fired for standing up in the middle of chatting to Julia Chatterley, and you get up and answer the doorbell, and everybody just has one of those moments where it's like, Jared, you're wearing Hawaiian shorts,
yeah, exactly,
and a pinstripe suit. Okay.
Don't worry about it.
So I think your signing bonus is, we'll send you to Savile Row, get you fitted up, get you 4 or 5 nice pinstripe suits, nice big winged collar shirts, big Windsor knots.
Still get like a proper double-breasted suit on Savile Row. Do it proper.
I can see you in a double-breasted waistcoat. I think double-breasted I looked at one of those. I couldn't pull it off, but I think you probably could pull off a double-breasted.
I'm not sure I could, but it won't stop me from trying.
I think when you start wearing a bow tie and a double-breasted waistcoat, I think your conversion to an SEC employee is fully done.
It's going to be bad.
But, we joke about it, but the SEC needs to bring in some smart people with some different perspectives.
They have. And I don't want to downplay. So what frustrates me right now with the SEC is not the enforcement division. I think the enforcement division has done a rather
You're
good
talking
job. Regulation,
basically.
Correct. Is that Hester Pierce, who's one of the commissioners, holdover from appointed during the Trump administration. She came out on Twitter recently, and the SEC said, we're doubling the size of the enforcement division focused on crypto to 50 people. And Esther just point blank said, we are a regulatory organization with an enforcement division, not an enforcement organization with a regulatory division. And that is spot on. There are so many good actors in this space. I mean, we've talked about Circle and Paxos and Gemini and the like, and they're getting thrown into a market of lemons because there is no referee out here setting the rules. And what I want to see is the SEC, the CFTC as a pure organization, come out and say, here are a set of rules for good actors so that they're able to differentiate themselves, so that consumers can identify who are the good actors, and we can start flushing the garbage out from the system. That's not going to happen via enforcement. That's going to happen via regulation and people saying, look, I am a good actor and I'll prove it because I do all of this stuff.
And well, then people like you and other people in the community can go, these people have done the work. They've gone and made sure they're compliant with these regulations. Oh, look, here we can see in their filings. And, people like me who maybe aren't as smart as people like you, and people like you who aren't as smart as people who'd actually read the regulations and do the work, that will flow down into the industry we'll see it on Twitter, we'll see it picked up in the mainstream media, we'll see it picked up in the press. The regulation will drive down to somebody like me, and instead of me using Gemini as my exchange because I've done a bit of work and I've gone and I'd be able to go, how good is Gemini? And I'd be able to go and look, and somebody would have synthesized the regulations, somebody would be able to tell me, and I'd be able to make a concerted decision of, do I use Coinbase, do I use Binance, do I use Kraken, eToro, whatever the exchange is, I'd be able to make some informed decisions because people smarter than me that I'd be able to read would have done the work.
And it's basic disclosures. I mean, Gemini for me is a really good example. I think they've done, from everything I can tell, they've done the right thing. They've tried to hold themselves to the highest regulatory standard. And still, there are places where I'm not comfortable with Gemini. And
I'm not saying they're perfect when I say they're good. I'm just saying I get the impression they've gone after it.
No, I like to use them as an example because generally I think they do try and do a really good job. I think they are trying to do all the right things. I think they have done their best to go get regulated, to put disclosures out there, to educate consumers. I think they've done pretty much everything right. And yet if you go on and hold their stablecoin, which is dollar-backed, last I knew they custodied at State Street, publicly disclosed, dollars held there, good auditability, like all the things you want to see. They're offering an 8% yield, meaning if they will pay you 8% on the stablecoins that the Gemini USD that you hold there. That 8% yield is generated via, they lend the money. Gemini itself lends the money out through Genesis. Genesis is an institutional crypto trading investment and related platform. I do not know. I've gone through all of Gemini's terms. I don't know how that agreement is structured. So I don't know.
Where does the 8% come from is your point.
Clearly it comes from Genesis into Gemini into I get a slice of it. But I don't know how that loan is actually structured. Meaning, is my exposure to Gemini? Am I indirectly exposed to Genesis? In order, if Gemini goes bankrupt, am I on the hook to now go up to Genesis in bankruptcy proceedings to go get my money, and they're first in line as a creditor? Am I exposed on a per loan basis? Meaning, if I put $100 there, 30 goes to this person at Genesis and 70 to that, and my loan's actually split up. So if stuff goes wrong, I got multiple people to chase. Is it one big bucket? I don't know how it's structured, and it's a level of detail that most people aren't going to care about. But if either organization went bankrupt, it's going to matter a lot. It's a risk level that I'm not willing to take on, which is the decision I've made. But in an ideal world, it's not due diligence that I have to go trolling through 50 pages of terms and conditions. That relationship should be standardized. We should have a regulation that says, if you're promising 8%, we know what the structure is, etc. I can go back to the standard and go, I know how this works. I am or I'm not comfortable with it.
Yeah. Regulation 123 subsection B covers returns. They are compliant to that regulation. I'm good. Somebody smarter than me's gone and done the regulation. Somebody's gone and checked their enforcement. I'm comfortable to back off my money into that system because I know it's regulated.
And if they go bankrupt, I know what happens in bankruptcy proceedings and all. Like and we have versions of this. We know how it works for deposit accounts and FDIC. And it's to the point now where there's going to be people who are comfortable being out in front of that. I'm willing to take on the risk, even though the regulations aren't there. Fine. There are people that are willing to take on that risk because there are enough disclosures they can get comfortable with it. Fine. There's a group who, when the regulations first come out and people first get certified, but there's no track record of it being enforced or working. We don't know where the potholes are. They're going to be comfortable. And then there's a long tail, the vast majority of the market, who's not going to take on any of that risk and goes, let me see what happens over the next 20 years. It didn't blow up. Got it. It seems to have worked. Now I'm comfortable moving in. And fundamentally, that's when you think we take for granted savings accounts and other types of deposit accounts. That's where that lives now. Most people don't give 2 cents worth of thought to, will my bank give me my money back? They don't think about the different bankruptcy proceedings if a bank goes broke. They don't know that there's an FDIC insured account that's privately funded by the banks, but is backstopped by the U.S. government. Like, nobody cares because for damn near 100 years, the system just worked. Well, the way we got there was by writing these regulations and then proving again and again and again through failure after failure after failure, the damn thing worked. Well, now you don't have to spend as much time thinking about it. Step one is getting those regulations on the book, and we are just not there. And I would be, God, I want the regulators to step up and start doing that work because you got to start the clock.
So, Janet, I'll send you a link to this. Jared is available for work. You just need to buy him 3 pinstripe suits as a signing bonus.
There you go.
Great chatting to you as always, buddy. I think we've got to wrap. You've got to run to stuff. I've got to run to stuff. You've been listening to the after show where Jared and I goof around and give you our maybe more unpolished opinions.
I rant.
Yeah, basically I try and keep Jared on the reservation whilst he rants. But no, exactly. Thanks for listening. We'll get this published. We'll speak to you next week. Thanks very much. Speak to you soon.